All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, 1083 Reasons to File Your Taxes. We are very excited to present information on the new foster youth tax credit and the tax filing season with you all this year. So we're going to get started. We do have Spanish interpretation available, so I'll walk through some logistics first. So folks are having a little bit of issues with the Zoom webinar, but we do have technical support here. If you would like to join or if you're having any issues, we'll try and get folks through. And this is recorded, so we'll be able to share the information with everyone. We do have Spanish translation that is available. So what you have to do is go to the interpretation and select Spanish. If you'd like to have an interpretation in Spanish language. And we've got 2 interpreters that are working with us today. So go ahead and choose your language. We also have closed captioning available. All right, for the webinar today, we are going to do some introductions. We're going to release a number of publications and articles that will help folks learn how to file taxes for free, what credits are available to them, how they can get cash back, and where they can get a free appointment, and more than that, how to promote this information on social media or through emails or text messaging. We'll do an overview of the new foster youth tax credit, the law that was put in place, and what that means moving forward. We'll have the Franchise Tax Board provide background on tax filing and credits. We'll go over the consent and verification process that the California Department of Social Services has established with the Franchise Tax Board for use to claim this credit. And we'll hear from a first-time filer. Then we'll do some Q&A. So our presenters today are Asianique Dunlap, who was a first-time filer last year and used a volunteer income tax assistance site that was dedicated to current and former foster youth. And she'll share her experience getting ready to file taxes, what it was like working with that service. Andrew LePage is from the Franchise Tax Board and will be working with us to get some background on the credits and what all those mean, what they're worth, and why we should file and help young people file. Myself, I'm Anna from John Burton Advocates for Youth, and I'm on our housing and health team and work on our foster youth tax project with a number of counties and participants and stakeholders from the community and from nonprofit organizations. And then we do have participants from the California Department of Social Services who have been implementing this bill with the Franchise Tax Board in order to be ready for tax season. So thank you to all of our panelists who we are still working to get in the room here today. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is that we have a number of new resources that are available live on our website. Our health team, Simone, Andy, and I have been working on getting these ready to go, and they're up on our website live. So I want to talk about these resources that are available to you. So first is the tax filing guide. This guide is updated for the 2023 tax season. It does have information about all of the credits you'll hear about today, so you don't have to memorize this. It's in the guide. It does have a table of contents with explaining what all those tax forms and jargon means. It explains some special circumstances for young people in care or former foster youth that should be considered when they're filing their taxes. And it has a visual of how to claim the foster youth tax credit. So check that out. The last page on it has key resources and information, live links that you can click to go get your free tax appointment and get your money back in your refund. The second resource here is the tax prep checklist. Now, this checklist was made with current and former foster youth. It essentially walks through a step-by-step, what do you need to get ready to file your documents? This is great for an ILP class or just if someone's never filed before or looking to file and they don't know which documents to get together. It kind of talks you through step-by-step what you need, where to get it if you're missing that, and where you can get some help with filing by yourself for free or with a support from a VITA site. So no one should be paying to file their taxes who's a current and former foster youth. Most people do qualify for free tax services, and this checklist will help them both get ready to file and then file with support of free services. And that can save people about $300 to $400 on average a year. The third thing is an outreach toolkit, and that toolkit is to help promote the tax credit. This is a new $1,000 tax credit. It's the first year you can claim it. Moving forward, it's ongoing. So, not very many people know about this yet. So we want your help promoting it and spreading the word. So that outreach toolkit is going to be, it has pictures and sample posts and messages that you can tailor to whoever you're sharing it with to help spread the word. The more people that know about the foster youth tax credit in year one, the more money we can get into the pockets of young people in California and help boost our local economies as well. All of these are on the website, and I believe Andy is going to drop those links into the chat. In terms of the chat and Q&A, if you have a question, please put that in directly into the Q&A so that we can go ahead and answer those for you. And we'll have a Q&A at the end. So thanks for doing that. The next set of resources that I wanted to bring to your attention are the tax appointment roster. We have a roster of participating new sites that are dedicated to serving current and former foster youth with free tax appointments. VITA volunteers are trained by the IRS. They are certified, and they dedicate their time each week to providing free tax appointments where young people can bring their documents and get their taxes filed with help, get their questions answered, and get their money back in their pockets. Now, if you're looking for an appointment in your area, this roster is how you can find one that's dedicated to current and former foster youth or youth from out-of-home placement probation, or it has links to statewide services where you can find a local VITA site if your area, service area doesn't have a site yet. We also have this self-filing guide that shows you exactly how to file for free using myfreetaxes.org, myfreetaxes.org. And it's a step-by-step guide and kind of has screenshots of what everything should look like. And using that service, you can learn how to file on your own with a little bit of help. So if you're like, oh, I've done this before, or maybe you paid TurboTax, this is basically the free version of TurboTax that's IRS certified, and we've got a guide to walk you through that. So again, don't pay to file your taxes. If you want to do it yourself, check out this guide. And we have a fact sheet on how tax benefits can benefit foster youth. So if young people aren't sure, should I file? Do I have to file? Why would I do that? This kind of has some quick talking points and reasons why it would be a good idea to file your taxes this year. Great. So one more thing I want to share with you in terms of new resources for the 2023 tax season is that we have a couple of videos. One is for VITA volunteers who are helping foster youth claim the foster youth tax credit. This short video actually shows what it looks like in the TaxSlayer system and how to click, where to click, how to get in there, and how to use that system to make sure that we don't miss over this credit. It's a little bit buried in the state tax return. So, this actually shows you how to click on the state tax return, how to get in there, and how to claim that money when you're filing for a young person. In correlation with this self-filing guide, we also have a video that is made to show young people who are filing on their own with TaxSlayer what it looks like to go in and click and claim that credit. So again, they don't skip over it or miss it. We don't want someone to get the end of the tax return and not get their $1,000. So these are the resources that are available to you to help kind of start promoting this new tax credit and get the word out, and all of the publications that we're launching today for the start of the 2023 tax season. So I'm just going to do a quick check and reminder that if you do want Spanish translation, you can click on interpretation below. And I'm going to make sure that our participants are in the room. So I'm seeing a 916 number that's joined. Do you want to do an audio check really quickly?
Anna, this is Andrew LePage calling in.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I can hear you well, and I'm sorry about the technical issues. I'm going to rename you on the screen here so everyone knows who you are when it's your turn.
Is there any way for me to see what you're showing, or am I just gonna have to follow along with what I have from the link?
I'll have Andy try to work with you on that. So Andrew and Andy, if you can connect to try and see how Andrew could visually see the screen. Otherwise, I'll read off which slide we're on for you, and I'll try and help you that way.
Am I up soon?
No, it's still my turn. So thanks for joining. Sorry about the tech issues, thanks. Everyone. Thanks for your patience. All right, so now I'm going to go over this overview. Now that you're oriented to the JBay website and resources and materials that are available for you this tax season, I'm going to start just talking about tax filing and credits from, why does JBay work on this? So first of all, John Burton Advocates for Youth works on housing, health, and education for transition age youth. And part of having stable housing or completing your education or being healthy is financial health and having enough money to secure food, to get books for class, and to sustain any financial hardships. And we know that young people experience about 2 financial hardships a year, but they're young, so they haven't yet accrued savings. So here, what I want to talk about are some recent changes in laws that have allowed tax credits and tax filing to be financially beneficial to young people that can put money in their pockets, and how we've seen that start to happen over the last couple of years. So Congress actually changed the federal earned income tax credit last year in 2021, which for one time only and for the first time let foster youth claim the earned income tax credit, which was worth up to $500 or so for single filers, or a couple $1,000 for those with children. Now, this was one time, it's not extended, but we do hope that Congress at the federal level in the future will extend that policy change. That policy led to hundreds of thousands of dollars going into the pockets of foster youth, and we hope to see it continue. Because that was so beneficial and because it was one time, California actually established the foster youth tax credit to allow 18 to 25-year-olds who are in foster care on or after age 13 to receive up to $1,083 starting this year if they qualify for the California Earned Income Tax Credit. So Andrew will talk about that later in today's presentation, about what it means to be eligible and how to file and everything official about the California Earned Income Tax Credit. The California Earned Income Tax Credit was expanded a few years ago to include 18 to 24-year-olds filing as single with no children. And that credit is a couple $100s when you file your taxes if you're eligible. Now, all custodial parents are eligible for that credit. And then finally, for parenting filers or parenting youth, if they're the custodial parent and they file their taxes, there are thousands of dollars that they may qualify for between the federal child tax credit and the young child tax credit here in California. So that could be worth over $3,000 for a young person who has one child. And so we always say, if you've had your first job, if you've had your first kid, or if you have missing stimulus checks, file your taxes. So a lot of questions say, well, what if I don't have work, or what if this, or what if that? There's different credits that people qualify for. So it's always a good idea to file and see if you can get some cash back. It's going to help you and boost your income. So these are the legal changes that have allowed for the tax system to be more beneficial and more equitable to young people who are working or who are parenting. So a little bit more on the new law. Senate Bill 201 established the foster youth tax credit and it's $21 million each year. The $21 million goes out the door when young people file their taxes and claim this, which is what today's webinar is going to kind of walk you through later. So this $1,000 refundable tax credit, again, was championed by Governor Gavin Newsom in the budget last year, and it's implemented this year for the first time. So we're making history. The other champions that helped promote this and make it happen were State Controller Betty Yee, Senator Ana Caballero, and the Cali ITC Coalition, who worked through the legislative process last year. Now we have the Franchise Tax Board and the Department of Social Services working together to implement this. And again, the rules are that you must have been age 18 through 25 in 2022. You had to be in California foster care at age 13 or older or out of home placement probation. And you must be eligible for the California Earned Income Tax Credit, meaning that you've earned $1 or more. And you'll learn more about the background and details of that shortly. So again, CDSS is here today and they'll walk us through more formally about how to claim this credit. But you have to file a California state tax return, which means you do have to file a federal return. They kind of feed into each other. You do have to have a social security number or ITIN number. An ITIN are for folks who are working but might not be a US citizen or resident alien. They may be undocumented, but you can still get this credit. It's there for you. You have to check a box that we'll show you some screenshots of later, saying yes, that you are in foster care and that you're eligible, and yes, that you provide consent to the Franchise Tax Board to verify your eligibility. To qualify for the Cali ITC, you have to have lived in California for at least 6 months in 2022 and have earned income of at least $1 and not more than $30,000. And to be an eligible foster youth or probation youth, you were 18 through 25 in 2022, so not yet 26. If you were 17 in 2022, you'll get it next year. So, you know, file this year, but file again next year for the credit. And then you were in care on or after age 13. If there's any verification issues, you'll get a letter and we'll talk about that later, but just respond to that to help make sure that you're claiming the credit and getting your money. One thing I want to do as well before we get into the details is talk about the amazing work that our counties are doing to help implement and get this credit off to a great start this tax season. So we have a number of counties who are participating in the Foster Youth Tax Filing Challenge, and they're doing a lot of great work to get ready, to spread the word, to do outreach, to help set up appointments, and to make sure that young people are able to benefit from this financial resource of tax filing. So these are all of our participating counties, and we're so grateful for their efforts to help young people learn financial literacy, tax literacy, and get to a free appointment in their neighborhood. Some counties are already implementing some early foster youth tax credit strategies that I wanted to share with you. So our counties are building outreach lists. They've looked in their data system to see who might have been 18 to 25 now who is in care on or after age 13. This is a very broad rule. So they are creating those outreach lists and plans to spread the word and make sure that young people who are eligible know about it and hear about it and go ahead and file their taxes for free. So some people have been doing data requests, working with their data team. Others then take that list and are tracking referrals to a local tax appointment site that they're seeing, okay, we referred them. Are people going? Did they get it? Did they get stuck? Are they missing documents? You know, they're kind of tracking to see if there's any hiccups along the way and really providing a secondary level of support with that referral. So those referral tracking sheets, we'll see how they work. This is year one, and we're hoping that it leads to positive outcomes and a boost in income for our young people. Some counties are also helping with verification. They are providing word of the court letters or verification letters for all youth in care that they've pulled from their outreach list so that when they go set up an appointment, they can use that letter. So county ILPs or county staff that are dedicated to that, or the Ombuds office has a verification form request that you can call. And JBay does have this information in our guides, in our checklist. So if you don't know how to get that help with verification, check out those resources that I promoted earlier. And then we've already done a couple of independent living program classes. They're really fun, and it's so nice to answer a bunch of questions for young folks about taxes, or, what do they need? And they've been hosting ILP classes at the end of January, beginning of February, to get young people ready to gather their documents and to teach them where they can get a free appointment and get that appointment booked. So counties are already off and running. They're doing an amazing job, and we really appreciate their support in helping spread the word and make this a positive first year for the foster youth tax credit. So way to go, counties. We really appreciate you. The next part of this program is that we have participating organizations, nonprofits that are serving current and former foster youth who are becoming official IRS volunteer income tax assistance sites, which means they are passing through IRS security protocols. They're creating a schedule. They're recruiting and training volunteers who are ready and trained from the IRS. They're certified to help you do your taxes. Myself and Andy from our staff are IRS certified and also ready to help. So we're looking forward to this. And these are all of our organizations who are part of the Foster Youth Tax Project and have sites dedicated. Their appointment roster is listed on our website. So you can look for an appointment in your area using that roster that Andy will put in the chat. And when you click to make that appointment, there's also a flyer in there. So if you're staff working with young people, you don't need an appointment yourself, there's a flyer you can download in that roster, and there's contact information. You can reach out to those sites and maybe help book some of their appointments, help young people get through the door, get ready for that appointment, and collaborate. So we do have that roster there for you to help promote appointments. And we're not everywhere yet. There are places in California where there is not a VITA site or a free tax site locally. So we do have some free filing online or Zoom options. JBay will be hosting some I'll talk about in a second, but there's also these links in the PowerPoint that you can get where you can find a site appointment near you. This is not an exhaustive list of all the VITA sites. These are just the folks who we're working with for this project. So there are many communities that do have VITA sites in different locations, and you can find them by calling 211 or using that link. You can also seek help from myfreetaxes.org, which can help link you to an appointment in your community. So if you're not on our main roster or you're having a hard time, use those other links. We'll help find an appointment for you. So we are working with a couple of partners to spread the word to former foster youth and current foster youth. So it's difficult sometimes to make sure that former foster youth hear about things when they've moved, they've changed, they're in their careers now, and how do we get a hold of them? So we're partnering with organizations that serve former foster youth. Aspiranet, California Youth Connection, iFoster, and Think of Us are going to help spread the word by phone banking, text messaging, emailing. JBay, we here are going to host one event a month with free self-filing. So again, if there's not a local appointment or event near you, join us for a Zoom webinar, and we'll do breakout rooms and help you file your taxes and claim the foster youth tax credit, get your money during those sessions. So there's a link that Andy will put in the chat. If anybody isn't able to find an appointment and you want to come and learn how to file yourself for free, that is what those events are for. And then we have our social media toolkit that folks will be promoting and spreading the word. So if you can follow these organizations, help boost and spread their outreach efforts, anything you can do to help spread the word year one, is going to make sure that we get that $20 million out the door and into the pockets of young people this year. And of course, we could not do this without our project funders. All of those sites that were set up and launched need staff time and service availability. They're using gift cards to help youth get to and through the appointment, maybe some volunteer gifts that can't be paid for with some of the state money to run a VITA site. So there's some flexible foundation funding that's allowing for a higher level of support to young people who are first-time filers and who may need a little bit more TLC to get through their first time or answer all their questions. And all of these funders have helped make this project possible, including the mini grant support that is coming from an official state budget item that is for free tax preparation assistance and education and outreach. And our funders there have made all of those sites possible and these efforts possible by investing in foster youth in our communities and helping them file and learn this skill with support. So thank you all for your dedication. Okay, so we are now moving on to Andrew. Now, Andrew, I don't know if you're able to see the screen or if I should kind of verbally help you out with which slide we're on.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's just do our best to coordinate. So like I'm staring at slide 18 right now.
That's right.
And that's with two individuals on it and my name and franchise tax board.
That's the
So
one.
I'll just say next slide, please, when I'm ready to move on.
Yep, I got you.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Andrew LePage from the California Franchise Tax Board, or FTB, and we're one of the state's tax agencies. Full disclosure, I'm not a tax expert, but I know I or someone else presenting in this webinar should be able to help track down any answers to any questions you might have, or at least we'll try. And I'll try to avoid acronyms, but there are two I'll use: FTB for Franchise Tax Board and CALIITC for California Earned Income Tax Credit. Next slide, please. So here are just some tax filing basics for this year. There are more than 40 counties now where tax day, the deadline to file and pay, has been pushed back to May 15th from April 18th. It's it includes most of the major counties in the state: Alameda, Contra Costa, Fresno, Los Angeles, Orange, Placer, Riverside, Sacramento, San Bernardino, Stanislaus, Sutter, Yolo, Yuba. And then you want to keep an eye on other counties that might be added to that list later, but so far it's over 40, I believe. And then again, April 18th for everyone else, May 15th if you're in one of those disaster areas. And keep in mind that these deadlines are to pay your taxes to avoid any tax owed, assuming you owe tax, to avoid interest and penalties. All Californians automatically have until mid-October. This year it's October 16th to file the return. But anything you owe in the way of state taxes would be due on the April 18th or May 15th, depending on where you are. And our fast, easy, and free CalFile service is available, and it allows you to file a state return directly with the Franchise Tax Board. And just a side note, those claiming CALIITC tend to file early in the year. That's typically about 90% of them, to get the money to put in their pockets as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are these credits? We'll be talking mainly about the three state tax credits: CALIITC, the Young Child Tax Credit, or YCTC, and the Foster Youth Tax Credit, of course. These are the state's three cashback tax credits. So not only can they lower any tax you might owe, but they can provide cash back, money directly to you. And combined, these credits can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars for individuals and their families, depending on income and number of dependents. You don't get any of these credits if you don't file your state and federal tax returns. And there's no restriction whatsoever on how the money can be used. Next slide, please. Just Anna, just to double check, we're both looking at the federal EITC slide, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so here's a quick detour to the federal EITC. Just very basic information, and I encourage you to learn more at irs.gov/EITC. It's worth your time to look into the federal credit more because that credit can be quite a bit larger than the state CalEITC. According to the IRS's website, the federal EITC refunds by law won't be issued before mid-February. FTB doesn't hold CalEITC refunds to state EITC. It issues them within the same timeframes as any other refunds. Next slide, please. So a little background, CalEITC came along in 2015, and it was created as a supplement to the federal EITC. And this program has expanded considerably in recent years. I think Anna mentioned earlier. And so these credits are affecting many more lower income Californians the last few years. That's as the age and income range have been expanded in recent years. And also a couple of years ago, we added the Young Child Tax Credit, which was initially worth up to $1,000, and now it's up to $1,083, as we'll talk about later. And then in the first 4 years, there was about 1.1 billion in CalEITC credits awarded. So that was in 4 years. And then in the last 3 years alone, that amount has more than doubled. Next slide, please. Some basics of CalEITC eligibility. I think this was mentioned earlier, but if you have an ITIN, you're eligible. And that was new for tax year 2020. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. In terms of age requirement, CalEITC has historically differed significantly from the federal EITC. It's simple for CalEITC to qualify. You must be 18 or older at the end of the tax year, unless you have a child, in which case there is no age restriction. To qualify for the federal EITC, those claiming the credit without a qualifying dependent must be at least 25, but less than 65 at the end of the tax year, and this is for tax year 2022. Just a quick note in terms of what the heck is earned income. It's wages, salaries, tips, and other employee compensation that is subject to California withholding, or it's net income from self-employment. Next slide, please. More eligibility basics. It doesn't matter how long you work during the tax year in California, but you must live in California for more than half of the year, at least 184 days. I don't think investment income impacts too many people on this call. To qualify, you can't be eligible to be claimed as a dependent on someone else's return. There is a caveat, unless you have a qualifying child. And there's more information on this on our website at FTB, one of the CalEITC pages. And if there's nothing else you remember from what I say today, it's to please visit ftb.ca.gov/CalEITC. We'll show you the landing page that takes you to in a second here. And then all the information flows from there. One more note, in most cases, those using the filing status married or registered domestic partner filing separately will not qualify for CalEITC. But there are some exceptions, and they're explained on FTB's website. Next slide, please. Anna, we're looking at qualifying as an ITIN filer, right?
That's right.
Okay, so in terms of qualifying for CalEITC, the process is the same for those filing with a Social Security number or an individual taxpayer identification number, or ITIN. And FTB treats ITIN filers the same way as any others filing their state tax return. We might occasionally seek to verify a taxpayer's identity and eligibility for the credit by requiring a copy of a Social Security card for a filer using a Social Security number, or a copy of a passport or other identifying document for an ITIN filer. And FTB does not share information from tax returns with any federal or state agency for the purposes of determining someone's immigration status. Next slide, please. Okay, the Young Child Tax Credit, which has just been expanded for tax year 2022 forward. So this year's return reflecting your situation last year. And the expansion is that income is no longer a requirement. You still have to qualify for all other requirements of Cali ITC, but for tax year 2022 forward, income is no longer one of them. You still must have at least one child under 6 at the end of the tax year. The maximum award was adjusted up to $1,083 starting for tax year 2022. The average award last year was around $930. And like Cali ATC, the Young Child Tax Credit phases out as income rises. And specifically for those who earned income above $25,000, the Young Child Tax Credit gradually declines to zero once your annual income hits $30,000. And I'll show you that in a second in a chart. Next slide, please. Okay, what we're mainly here for, the foster youth tax credit available for tax year 2022 forward. And like Cali ATC and the Young Child Tax Credit, the foster youth tax credit reduces the tax owed or offers cash back. The maximum credit for tax year 2022 is $1,083. And this is key per qualifying individual. So it would be a maximum of double that, $2,166, if both the primary taxpayer and spouse or registered domestic partner qualify. And that is different than Cali ITC and the Young Child Tax Credit, which are just awarded per tax return. With the foster youth tax credit, it's per individual. And then the foster youth tax credit will be adjusted annually for inflation going forward. The credit amount phases out gradually as earned income exceeds $25,000, just like with the Young Child Tax Credit. And the foster youth tax credit is claimed on the same form, the FTB 3514 used for Cali ITC and the Young Child Tax Credit. And if you're an e-filer, you would just follow the prompts or instructions specific to your software. And then I think you've heard this before already, but you might qualify for the foster youth tax credit if you meet all of the following requirements. You qualify for Cali ITC. You were 18 through 25 at the end of the tax year. You were in foster care at age 13 or older and placed through the California foster care system. So others can address this better than I, but the key is that you had to have been placed through the California foster care system. That doesn't mean you had to spend all your time in California. It could have been out of state. And then you need to satisfy foster care verification requirements. Just a quick side note before we move on, I'm told most of the tax returns FTB has received so far claiming the foster youth tax credit have a checked box for consenting to verification of the filer's foster youth status. And in more than 60% of the cases, this has successfully verified the foster youth status. So checking, I'm sure you've heard this already today, but checking the box isn't required, but it does make it easier to verify a filer's foster youth status. Next slide. Okay, here are the income limits and the maximum credit by family size for the state and federal EITCs and the Young Child Tax Credit. You see the maximum income someone can have and still qualify for Cali ATC and the federal EITC. The maximum credits that can be awarded for tax year 2022 based on family size, 0 to 3 or more children. A family with 3 or more children can qualify for, my math serves me correctly, 10,352 in combined Cali ITC and federal EITC. Plus, if you throw in the Young Child Tax Credit, you're looking at another 1,083. If you max out everything on the chart, if you have the maximum number of children, you qualify for the maximum amount, looking at more than 11,000. However, most people don't get that much. That's the high end. Next slide, please. This just shows the relationship between tax year 2022 income, and the income ranges are along the bottom there on this chart, family size, and the Cali ITC credit amount, which goes up the left side. The credit amount is up the left side. The line colors correlate to how much, family size. The chart shows the income range in the rectangular boxes off to the right there for the maximum, that give you the maximum Cali ITC credit based on family size. So initially, as income climbs, so does the Cali ITC award. Then the credit amount peaks and phases out as income increases to the maximum 30,000. If you look at the top two lines for filers with either 2 or 3 or more children, the maximum credit tops out when the annual income reaches 9,000. So those receiving the maximum credit have very low incomes. Next slide, please. I wanted to include this just so you can sort of visualize what happens with the Young Child Tax Credit, the Foster Youth Tax Credit, when income up to 25,000 gets you the maximum credit amount of 1,083 for both the Young Child Tax Credit and the Foster Youth Tax Credit. But once the income starts rising above 24,000, it gradually ratchets down to 0 once you hit the 30,000 in income. So basically what's happening there is for every $100 that's earned in excess of 25,000, the credit declines by almost $22. Next slide, please. Okay, fraud and identity theft. The main takeaway here is that the IRS and FTB do not call to threaten taxpayers, and they do not ask for credit card or bank account numbers. We recommend that you simply hang up if you receive a threatening or fishy phone call. You should be suspicious anytime someone tells you they can settle a tax debt for pennies on the dollar. Also, we encourage taxpayers to be aware of what we call ghost preparers. And those ghost preparers, they do not sign a tax return that they prepare. They will print the return and tell the taxpayer to sign and mail it to the IRS or FTB. For e-filed returns, the ghosts will prepare but refuse to digitally sign as the paid preparer, which should raise suspicions. Next slide, please. So typically for someone, or typically before someone would receive a phone call from FTB, they would get a letter. FTB has a letters page, web page. You can just search our site for letters at ftb.ca.gov, where you can verify and learn more about any letter you might receive from FTB. And we also have a scams webpage. I think you can just search our website for scams to learn more about what to look for and how to file a report of a suspected scam online. Next slide, please. If FTB does ask for more information from a taxpayer claiming Cali ITC or the Foster Youth Tax Credit, the request will come on a letter we call the FTB 4502, and you can see part of it on this slide. The key is that it's going to have an FTB letterhead, and it'll say additional documentation required, refund pending. The letter is being used in cases where more information is needed to verify someone's foster status. Next slide, please. So if someone does get a letter, just know that FTB is just trying to verify the person qualifies for the credit. The letter would be sent to the taxpayer within a month of the tax return being filed. So within a month, if you're going to get one. And Cali ITC and the Young Child Tax Credit, Foster Youth Tax Credit won't be awarded until the taxpayer responds and FTB verifies qualification for the credit. On our letters webpage, we note to allow 8 weeks for us to review and respond to the documents you send. So a couple months for us to respond once we've reached out for any additional information that's necessary. Next slide, please. Okay, here I just want to cheerlead for FTB's online resources. What you're looking at is our just updated Cali ITC landing page, where you end up when you use our so-called vanity URL, ftb.ca.gov/Cali ITC. This is just the starting point for what's become the Cali ITC family of credits, because we've got 3 state credits now all kind of linked together. If you can choose the eligibility and credit information over to the left to reach our longstanding page with most of the information you need, including Cali ITC Form 3514 and the accompanying instructions, and all your eligibility information is summed up on that page. You can link to the new dedicated foster youth tax credit and young child tax credit pages. You can launch the Cali ITC calculator, which you'll see in just a second. That shows you all the state credits we've been talking about, plus the federal credit. And on over to the left there, we also have a link to our Cali ITC outreach materials in case you're interested in downloading anything in the way of a flyer or poster. What you don't see on this page, because it got clipped off, is we also have a link down there to free tax help, the volunteer income tax assistance or VITA locator that we've got. And also at the very bottom that you can't see, there are more options for filing, including free and other filing options that you can link to from there. So next slide, please. This calculator is really the star of our marketing campaign for Cali ITC and related credits. So this is a scenario I think Anna came up with, combining the state credits awarded for someone without a child, a foster youth age 19 who made $11,000 last year and ended up with $1,258 in credits. We're excluding the federal credit because at 19 you wouldn't be old enough for tax year 2022 to qualify for the federal EITC. Because as we mentioned earlier, it was different the prior year, but for tax year 2022, you've got to be 25 and less than 65. Next slide, please. So in this scenario, in the calculator, we show the value of the combined state and federal credits awarded to a 19-year-old foster youth with a 3-year-old child, filing with the so-called head of household status, earning $11,000 last year. Head of household just means not married and you support and house a qualifying person. But in this case, you end up with close to $6,500 in credits. And although our EITC calculator isn't perfect, it is pretty fast and easy to use. And it gives you a great estimate, if not the actual number of what you qualify for. So I highly recommend that you check that out. Next slide, please. Here's our new foster youth tax credit page, which you can get to easily from the landing page we just showed you. And let's see, you've got your eligibility requirements here, the 3 ways your foster youth status can be verified, which I think someone went over earlier, but 3 ways are check the consent box on Form 3514 or follow the instructions if you're using tax software. And that checkbox allows California Department of Social Services to try to verify your foster youth status with the statewide database. Or you can provide a foster youth verification letter when paper filing, or upload it if possible when e-filing. And if neither of those apply, FTB will mail a letter asking you to provide verification. And there's also some contact information there over to the right for CDSS. Next slide, please. Okay, these are some links to our outreach materials. Some of it's in a Google Drive, some of it's on our website under outreach materials. And then Anna has an order form there for printed forms, and that's for agency and nonprofits who are serving current and former foster youth. And I think that does it for me.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Andy has just put the order form into the chat. We can't thank you enough, and I'm so sorry for the tech issues, but you did wonderful over the phone. And we do have a couple of questions. I know you're busy at the FTB, it's tax season, but if you could answer a couple of questions for us before we move to the next section, that would be great. So one is actually one is actually about the California middle class tax refund. It says, can you explain how clients can claim that in their taxes if they did not receive it, or how you can get it if it cannot be claimed in the tax return?
Yeah, so one of the upsides of the middle class tax refund, the way it was set up, is it was automatic if you qualified. It was based on a tax year 2020 state personal income tax return. So most of the eligibility was determined based on that return. So, you know, that's going back a couple of years, right? It's based on that. And I know that some folks missed that all along, but that's where you have to look to see if you meet all the eligibility requirements. If you do, and you're a California resident when your payment is issued, it's automatic. There's nothing you have to do. There's nothing you'll be able to do on your tax year 2022 return to get it. If you go to our website, and you can go to any page at ftb.ca.gov and link up at the top. Every single page has a link to our middle class tax refund informational web page. So you can see the eligibility requirements, and a schedule for when the payments should go out. If you feel that you should have had a payment by now, you absolutely qualify and you should have received that payment, then you should call the vendor that we hired to handle customer service calls. Okay, they're called Money Network, and the information is all there on the website. But the phone number, if you'd like, I'll send it to you, Anna, or Andy. You can pop it into chat, which I can't do right now. But it's middle class tax refund. Customer support number is 800-542-9332. Again, 800-542-9332. And that's where you could say, you know, here's who I am, here's why I think I qualify, here are my specifics. You can have a short conversation and they can help you determine if you're eligible. Maybe something, you know, is amiss with the payment, or it's just delayed, or you're in a category of people, for example, who changed their address fairly recently, who might not receive it until midway through, or those payments might not even get issued until next month. I think we were saying through February 14th. So, and then there are just some folks who fall into exceptional categories where they have to go through manual review. The bulk of everything has been issued already, over 9.4 million payments. But there are some folks who are still waiting for a reason. And that's what I would suggest. If you think you qualify, review the eligibility requirements online. If you think you qualify, call the vendor we hired to manage both the debit cards that are mailed out as well as all the customer service. Was there another aspect to that question,
No,
or did I answer it?
that was the question. You did great on the middle class tax refund. And then there's a question about if an undocumented non-minor dependent is filing joint taxes with their spouse, can they still qualify for the tax credit?
Say that again.
Can an undocumented young person, 18-year-old filing with their spouse, can they qualify for the tax credit?
As long as one, double check me on this, Anna, but as long as one has an ITIN? Yep,
exactly. So if there's someone undocumented who's filing, whether it's joint or single, then you use an ITIN number to file that. Great.
Or this is for the state. This is for the state credit.
for the state credits.
On the federal side, it wouldn't work.
Yes. And then there's a question about, can TAY with SSI, Supplemental Security Income, apply for the EITC or Cali ITC since they have no earned income?
Yeah, so the rule to qualify for Cali ITC is that you need to have at least $1 of earned income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so folks with SSI are able to earn some income sometimes, a certain amount. There can be penalties if you earn too much, you lose some SSI. But if you've done some work, at least $1 worth of work, you can still use that to claim on your taxes. But typically, folks with SSI who are not earning any income aren't filing unless there's another reason to file.
And again, earned income is wages, salaries, tips, and other employee compensation that is subject to California withholding, or it's net income from self-employment. So you have to have at least $1 of that to qualify for Cali ITC.
Yes.
And that's what gets you the foster youth tax credit. And the one exception we discussed today is if you meet all the other requirements of Cali ITC and the young child tax credit, you will get the young child tax credit without income. Great.
Now, one last question here before I let you go. And this is really a clarifying question because parenting TAY or youth, they don't have to be 18 to receive the young child tax credit or federal child tax credit. If they're 17 years old, they qualify, right? So I think there's sometimes confusion about each credit has different eligibility rules. But if you're a parent, a custodial parent, you're taking care of that child, you can get these credits. So is there anything else you want to say to help clarify that? I think people get the different credits, their different rules confused.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing they have in common on this point of age is the federal and the state EITC is that if you have a child, there is no age restriction, right?
Yes. Great. Well, Andrew, I'm noticing that my inbox is full of FYTC materials order forms. So people are ready to help spread the word. I cannot thank you enough for joining us and for sharing all of this knowledge from the Franchise Tax Board. And please send from this larger community all of our thanks to your colleagues in the Franchise Tax Board for their work on implementing this tax credit this year. We're so excited to see how it goes and to help young people get their money. So I really appreciate you, Andrew. And I hope I know you can't see them, but people are putting little emojis in the webinar to appreciate you as well. So thank you so much, Andrew. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. So please keep putting your questions in the chat. We have a Q&A at the end, but we're going to go over how to the consent and verification process with CDSS now. So I know we actually have Kenesha, Pau, and I believe Anthony. If you want to come off of mute and put your videos on, we can move forward into sharing the next part of the presentation.
Hello.
Hi, and I did earlier promote Anthony, but let's see if they're able to join.
Okay.
In the meantime, hi, I'm Kenesha Mothershed. I work with the California Department of Social Services. I work in the Transition Age Youth Policy Unit. That's also known as just the TAY Policy Unit. I'm here with my coworker today who will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Pau Camacho, and I also work for the Transition Age Youth Policy Unit at the California Department of Social Services.
And hello, everyone. This is Anthony Bennett with the TAY Unit, Transition Age Youth Policy Unit. I literally just got into the system to allow me to unmute. So thank you, Anna. Sorry for my delay with this. I wanted to come on board and just really, no, I'm not Cynthia Badalero, but I'm here to just really assist her in the slides as well due to technical problems with her. So I did want just briefly, I'm introduce myself as well as the team here and kind of just go over a couple of slides. Really, CDSS has been working with the Franchise Tax Board as well as our internal partners to develop a system to allow the verification process to happen as easy as possible, and to ease the actual process of approving those who are applying for their taxes to be verified again as easy as possible. And this process started sometime back in March of 2022, and then through our internal process, as well as to figure out how to best go about assuring that individuals' names were not public, assuring that your identities were again protected. We went through a series of processes to develop a system to be able to ensure your security remained throughout the verification process. And now I'll move it back to Kanisha and Pao to complete the rest of the slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, for your work since March to implement the tax credit. So the first thing that we kind of found out last year was that CDSS estimated there are about 80,000 eligible foster youth, and that approximately 20,000 would file and claim the foster youth tax credit each year for different reasons, whether that be that they didn't work that year or did, or their age, or if they choose to file or not, and just if someone else is claiming them on a tax return as a dependent or not. So there were a lot of factors in this, but essentially that the CDSS estimated this large kind of population. Now, I did want to show what it looks like, and then Kanisha is going to kind of talk us through why these steps are so important. So to get to the foster youth tax credit, when you're actually filing your taxes, you have to go into the California return. You have to click to edit the California return. And then you have to click begin on this section called credits, where the foster youth tax credit is in that section. So you have to get to there where, however you file, you do have to kind of find the state return and find the credit section. And then you're going to click begin to edit the credit section, click begin on foster youth tax credit, and then click yes and yes. So we do have a video that actually visually shows this more clearly with Andy and I talking through it. So definitely watch that video, but Kanisha is going to talk about the importance of these steps and why it was set up this way. So, so you have to file a state tax credit, to file the state tax return to get this credit. And can you tell us about who would be eligible in terms of foster care placement history, their age, types of placement, or you know, that you have to be in California foster care to qualify for the foster youth tax credit? Now, just to be clear, all those other credits that Andrew was talking about, those are open to everyone, but this new foster youth tax credit has its own eligibility rules.
Hi, everyone. Kanisha here. Thank you, Anna. So yes, I think it's important to note that the role of the Department of Social Services is just one small aspect of the overall larger criteria eligibility for the foster youth tax credit. And so our specific role, which is the state policy unit's role, is to basically determine whether or not the tax filer, if they satisfy the foster care verification requirement. And so for us, it basically gets down to a couple of simple sentences. I know on the screen you have the legislation piece in front of you. Legislation oftentimes is super lengthy, but what it boils down to is when we go in and look at case files or records, it gets down to three things for us. And the first thing is the applicant declared a dependent or a ward in the state of California? And so that basically means, like, if you were declared like a dependent, which is also known as a 300, where you're declared a ward, that's oftentimes probation youth, known as 602s. And then we also have a transition piece between dependents, which tend to be social services, child welfare, and the probation department known as transitional youth, also known as 450s. So that is one of the criteria. Was the applicant declared a dependent or a ward in the state of California? Were you a 300, 602, or 450? The next stage is if the tax filer was in foster care at some point, at the ages 13 and later. So what that translates into is because here in California, we have what's known as extended foster care. That basically means you can be in care up until age 21, for those of you who are aware. And so our window of time basically is, were you or the tax filer, in foster care at some point in time between the ages of 13 through 21. That's the second criteria. And the third criteria is that was the applicant or tax filer have a out-of-home placement court order. That means that the judge said, hey, you're not able to remain safely inside your home at this time. So we're going to have you go into a home different than your family or your parents. Well, not your family, different from your parents. And so those are the three criteria. Were you dependent or a ward in the state of California? Were you in foster care at some time between the ages of 13 through 21? And were you in out-of-home placement order? So the judge has that order, and all kinds of placements can constitute out-of-home placements. And so like if you're in a tribally approved home, if you are living like with a relative, an aunt, uncle, cousin, someone different than your parent or your guardian, if you were in a foster family agency home, if you were in an STRTP, which was formerly known as group homes. So those are some examples of types of placements that often fulfill and meet the out-of-home placement criteria. But the key is to have an out-of-home placement court order. The also takeaway from this is that all three of those things I mentioned must apply. The dependency, being in care at 13, or having an out-of-home placement order, all three must apply in order for us to tell the Franchise Tax Board that, yes, you fulfill this foster care verification requirement. If only two or only one applies, then that would be a no to the Franchise Tax Board. You did not fulfill. And so following the conclusion of Department of Social Services components, I'll drop in the chat. There's a Welfare Institutions Code, also known as WIC, 11402, that has a super long list that identifies all of the approved out-of-home placement residences that qualify for that out-of-home placement criteria. And with that, I will toss it back to you, Anna.
Thank you for breaking down all that legalese and providing a link so people can really know, do I qualify? So now you kind of already explained this, but can you talk about why it would be so important to provide this consent? I know people might get confused at this part of the tax return, like, do I have to, do I not have to? How would you explain this? Because my understanding is you have to check the consent in order to get this credit. You don't have to do it and you don't have to get the credit, but you do have to do it if you want the credit. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's a little tricky. So and I think what it boils down to is that the Department of Social Services, so the Foster Youth Tax Credit is a Franchise Tax Board program. It is not a Department of Social Services program. So since it's not our program, we can't just give your foster care information out to the universe without your permission. So by checking that box on your tax filing application, you, John Doe, are saying, yes, I am a foster youth, and yes, please, social services, tell the Franchise Tax Board that I am, so I can see whether or not I am eligible for this foster youth tax credit. So if you check the box, we will tell them whether or not you're on what is known as an eligibility list. So in the Department of Social Services in our unit, we have a list about 20 to 30,000 names on it, already kind of like ready and for our access. And then we just go in and say, okay, John Smith, you applied. We look at our list. Okay, yes, you are on the list. You're eligible. Then we'll tell the Franchise Tax Board. But if you don't have that box checks, we can't tell them that. So it's an automatic know from our component. So if you don't check the box and the franchise tax board, so let me rephrase that. If you don't check the box and you don't have a foster care verification letter from the state or from your county office or your tribal representative, then the only avenue that the franchise tax board has is to come to social services and ask us to help them. But if you don't check that box, we can't help them. So we tell them an automatic no. So that no is despite if your name is on the list, so your name could be the first person on the list. If you don't check that box, it's a no. So checking that box ensures that multiple methods or layers can be checked in order to confirm or to confirm whether or not you're eligible, because not all names are on our list. Sometimes we have to manually go into our system and look for you if you have like a different name or something, but we can't even do that if you don't check that box. So checking that box as an applicant or tax filer is in your best interest if you want to confirm whether or not you satisfy the foster care requirement. And back to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Kenesha. That's really helpful. So we do have this next slide, which again just kind of goes over the verification and eligibility rules. Is there anything that you wanted to add about these boxes that we'll show next, that if you don't provide consent, if you do provide consent, what happens?
Anything I'd like to add on the screen? No, I don't think there's anything to add, but once again, other than it just goes to the importance of checking that box. I'm just going to reiterate that we do have multiple methods. So we have that eligibility list that's already prepared from our data department. It has thousands and thousands of names, but again, we're only human, so we ourselves are not free of errors. So in the event that your name isn't on that list, we can then manually go search for your records. But again, we can only do that if you have the box checked. So checking that box is the utmost important. Whether or not you provide a letter, you still want to check that box in the event that maybe your letter may or may not be sufficient to determine whether or not you're eligible, or not eligible. Let me rephrase that. Whether or not that letter is sufficient to determine if you fulfill the foster care verification requirements. Because those of you who are youth who have gotten the letters, it's one letter that you use for college, that you might use for housing, that you might use for CalWORKS or Cash Aid. It's one letter, but it doesn't break down the core criteria of the foster tax credit. So your letter may not be sufficient in some cases, so checking that box is in your best interest. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you so much. So there's a lot of steps in here to make sure that if you're eligible, you get that credit, and they're doing a lot of work on the back end to help you out. So help out the department and the franchise tax board by checking those boxes and doing these steps. Watch the video. It makes it super clear for how to do that when you're filing. And if you go to a tax appointment and they say, I don't know what to do, I don't see it, show them the video. It's on YouTube. Take a moment. Don't let this money pass you by. So the next thing here is about what if your name has changed? So this system that verifies someone is kind of in the back end. If they have changed their name since they were in foster care, there's a place in the tax return where you can actually type in the name that was used while you were in care. So if your name is different on the tax return now as you're filing as an adult, you would use that. It'll help the verification go more smoothly, but you don't have to. You can leave it blank. If your name didn't change, if it's the same as the tax return, you leave it blank, but there is a place to enter if your name has changed. Kenesha, do you want to add anything to that about name change?
Yeah, I can add a couple things for name change. So it's important that whether it be you or your spouse use, well, let me rephrase that. So it's important that you put your legal name that's on your ID on your tax application. There is a spot on the application, from my understanding, that you can put prior and previous names. So, and that's where you would put in your name that you had while you were in foster care in the event that it changed. So let's say, for example, let's say on December 31st, I was Kanisha Mothershed still. I'm a former foster youth now. I got married on January 2nd, and my name is now Kanisha Smith. So I will put Kanisha Smith on my application for taxes, but in the previous application box, I'll put Kanisha Mothershed. And that's important because Kanisha Mothershed is the name that's in the child welfare database. That's the name that's on that eligibility list, not Kanisha Smith. So that then goes back to the importance of checking the box, because as I mentioned before, that your name may or may not be on the established thousands of names we already have identified. Or it might be, but just under Kanisha Mothershed. And if you tell us only Kanisha Smith, then we have to manually look for your records, and then we will discover, hey, Kanisha Smith is actually really Kanisha Mothershed when she was in foster care. So so changing your name won't prevent you from accessing the foster tax credit if you identify your name while you're in foster care. And if you check that box. But that's an example of someone who would need a manual search. Is that someone who's had a name change or got married or for some reason after their case has closed. So please list as many names as you've got. If you have had a name change, if you had multiple name changes, if you have 6 names, 3 last names, list them all. Give us as much information that you can in order for us to help find who you are in the database. Thank you. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you. So same thing goes here. If you're filing as married and your spouse qualifies, or both the main tax filer and the spouse qualify, you can also claim for the spouse with the same rules. You just have to check the box and check to consent and then put in the name. Now, this is what it looks like in the system if you want to upload a verification letter. It's a classic drag and drop PDF. So you have to have the letter. Sometimes people take a photo picture, but I believe you have to save it as a PDF to upload it. So let's talk about that a little bit. This is optional. You don't have to do it, but since this is the first year of the foster youth tax credit, it could help you get verified year 1 and make sure you get that money on time. So Powell, can you explain the types of proof that will be accepted as an upload here, and who folks should contact if they need help getting proof?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Anna. So we will accept a foster youth verification letter for current or former foster youth that are 18 to 20 and not yet 21 years of age. To request a foster youth verification letter, they may contact their social worker, probation officer, tribal representative, or a local independent living program coordinator, even if your case is closed. In the event that you need assistance in locating your county office contact, you can send an email to our specialized email box, fyverify@dss.ca.gov, and we can provide that assistance. If you are 21 to 25 years of age, please contact the Foster Care Ombudsperson's Office by telephone at 1-888-846-1602. or at their email address. And I will include this information on the chat as well. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much. So I think we just talked about the good news is that once someone has been verified for the first time, FTB is able to keep that in their records for the next year. So they're going to hang on to that. Is there anything else you'd like to answer about the one-time nature of this verification process for tax filers? So if I'm 18 and I'm claiming this for the first time, I got to upload this. I'm going to do everything I can to get verified, but how about for next year?
So not all automatic approvals will roll over to the following year. So for example, if you get married or you change your name, then you would have to be re-verified. So in the event that the tax filer does not get married or change their name, then their approval will automatically roll over to the next year.
Great. So, and if someone gets married, they'll do the same process again to make sure they clear and qualify for the credit. Thank you so much.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead on to the next slide. This is the contact information that's provided in the tax return itself. Both VITA volunteers at the tax sites or youth who are self-filing on their own will see this message pop up in the foster youth tax credit. So if you're having any issues with verification, you'll know who to call and contact. And I think the last question I had was just what other advice does CDSS have for counties, youth, or providers who will be working to help youth claim the foster youth tax credit this year for the first time?
Kanisha?
So,
Yes.
yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So I guess a couple things. I guess it's important to note again that the Department of Social Services, our portion is only to determine whether or not the applicant satisfies the foster care verification requirement, which again is only one aspect of the criteria required to be met in order to receive the foster youth tax credit. So just a small component. And for us to even do that one component, please, applicants, youth, check that box. It's in your best interest. And if you have a letter, please do upload it. But again, note that a letter is not required if you check the box. The letter is kind of more of a secondary protection, or it can also be considered as a way to get screened or approved quicker in some cases. So again, if you don't have a letter, it doesn't mean you can't move forward. Just check that box and we will help you on our end. For counties and things, your role is also probably just as small as ours at the social services, and maybe even smaller sometimes in some cases. So if you have youth coming to you asking you for a verification letter, I think it would be helpful if you ask that youth, like what is their what program will they be using that letter for? Because if a youth tells you, oh, I'm going to take this letter and I'm going to give it to the franchise tax board so I can get this foster youth credit, and you're like, oh, you're not eligible, then you might help that youth save some time in accessing their credits. Because what happens, so the way we have it set up is if a youth checks the box and they're not eligible, let me rephrase that. If a youth checks the box and their name for some reason can't be located on the eligibility list we have already created, then that automatically triggers a manual verification from our unit, assuming the consent authorization box is checked. And that manual check can take up to 10 days in some cases. So it would be unfortunate if the applicant waited 10 whole days for us to say, no, you're not eligible, if it's something that the county could tell them beforehand, help save them time. And one thing that I should have mentioned, but I realized that I didn't just mention, was going back to my original comment about how for the foster youth eligibility criteria, how we have the 3 components that we look at basically, which are were you dependent or ward of the court in the state of California, were you in foster care at some point between the ages of 13 to 21, and were you in an out-of-home placement with a court order? So those are the 3 criteria we're assessing. But the one thing that I forgot to mention that I'm mentioning now is that there are populations of foster youth, current or former, who we know are not eligible for the program. So for example, those are your family maintenance cases. Those are where basically for you, those are basically that, yes, you were getting child welfare services and support was coming to your home, but the youth stayed inside your parents' residence and you didn't go live somewhere else. That's what we know as family maintenance. And those cases aren't eligible because that means if you are living in your house, it means that you did not have an out-of-home placement order, most likely. But every case is different because sometimes you go in and out of your parents' house multiple times, which is why checking that box is important, if we can confirm if that's your situation or not. But there are voluntary cases that are not eligible. If you are a foster youth in a different state, like Texas, Utah, Arizona, you're not eligible, only California foster youth are. And then if you like a probate case, and so that's an informal arrangements made outside of the eyes of foster care services. So we have a couple cases that we know aren't eligible that still may have, but you still may have your name in our database for one reason or another. So going back to my initial comment, counties, please ask your youth what they intend to use the letter for, so maybe you can help expedite some of their time and they may or may not need to wait. And with that, I think that's all I got for additional services to notate, Anna, and I will kick it back to you.
Thank you so much. So thank you to CDSS for all of your help getting this implemented and for your advice and clarifications. It's really helpful, and I know it's going to help us with year one implementation and getting this money to the right folks. And those other credits are available to everybody who qualifies for those. So there have been credits that people can qualify for a while, just really not a lot on the books for single filers who are 18 to 24, which is why the laws have changed. So the next slide, I know that we're approaching time. We have a number of questions in the Q&A, but one of the questions and one of the things that Asia is going to talk about next is, what is it like as a first-time filer to go and use one of our dedicated VITA sites and book an appointment and get help? So Asia used a site that we had worked with last year and is going to tell you about that. And Andy is going to put our site roster if anybody wants an appointment or to help a young person get an appointment, as Asia's sharing. And then I will stay on longer than 11:30 to answer a few more questions after Asia shares. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Asia, for sharing your experience.
Hi, my name is Asianique Dunlap. I'm a former foster youth and I work for John Burton Advocates for Youth as a youth advocate and a student at Sacramento State and a parent. I hope everyone is doing well and is excited to make history with this new tax credit for foster youth. I want to thank Governor Newsom and the State Controller's Office and the administration for creating this credit for us. All current and former foster youth, when you file your taxes, the government may give you a tax credit for working, being a parent, or going to college. A tax credit is money for which you're guaranteed to get in your refund, but you have to file to get it. The new foster youth tax credit is $1,000, and I can qualify for it since I'm 24. I'll also qualify for it next year too. If anyone who is in foster care or out of home probation from age 18 until age 26. I wish this was in place when I was 18. $1,000 can really be helpful. With the cash back from this refund, you can use it for your first down payment on your first car. You can pay for college books. You could go on your first trip. Last year, I received free tax help from a volunteer with one of John Burton Advocates for Youth VITA sites. It was hard to find an appointment here in Sacramento, so I scheduled a virtual appointment with Fresno Focus Forward site, and they helped me file taxes for the first time. My experience with Fresno Focus Forward was easy because the process was a step-by-step process. I was able to amend tax credits up to 3 years back because I was eligible for tax credits I didn't claim in the past years as a student. I was eligible to receive Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a federal tax credit for working people, and an educational credits for college. I learned as a family, I could receive the child tax credit. When I got my first return, receiving these cashback returns was really helpful for me because it saves money for emergencies. This year, I signed up for an appointment online with Luther Social Services here in Sacramento. The online form was easy to fill out. Emerald from the site helped me get my documents together. I need to get my ID, Social Security number, W-2s for my job, 1099 for self-unemployment, 1098-T from my student portal. I'm going to add up my expenses from my self-employment job, my education, and my childcare. Some advice I'll give to my peers and people who work directly with foster youth. I encourage current and former foster youth to file because it is not too late. Many foster youth move around a lot, and keeping important documents somewhere handy and keeping their address up to date It's very important that foster youth that have this, want to file for their first tax filing appointment. Also, when you file for your free tax appointment, always remember that you do not have to pay any tax preparation fees. Many of the documents that you need to file is going to be easy, but it might be hard to navigate if you don't have the right documents. So it might be a lengthy process for you. So make sure you book your appointment today and use the self-filing guide from John Burton to learn how to file and get your money. Let's make history together and claim our money with the foster youth tax credit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asia. And I'm so glad you're able to get an appointment in Sacramento with Lutheran Social Services this year from the site roster. And I'm so glad you were able to file and get 3 prior years of taxes and get your education credits that, a lot of young people might not have known about this, but we can help with prior years. So we are past the hour of the webinar, but I'm going to stay on and answer a few questions in Q&A. But a lot of these questions will be answered during your tax appointment at the site. They're personal questions. Every filer is different. So if you go to an appointment, there's actually an intake form that they go over with you, and they ask about all these questions to make sure they're filing your taxes correctly and that you have everything that you need. And you'll get a lot of your questions answered during that time. So I just encourage you to use the resources on our webpage and to go ahead and book your appointment. Your VITA volunteers will help you get the help that you need to do this correctly and get your money. So I'm just coming on I've been answering a lot of questions in the Q&A. There's the links to all of the resources on our website, and to our social media is an easy way to share this information. You can follow us there. You can also sign up for our newsletter. We'll be sharing information there. But now let's just answer some questions. So let me see here. So one says many transition age youth are told not to file unless they made a certain amount of money. But you do have to file taxes if you've earned as a single filer over $12,500 in income or scholarships combined. So about half of young people did have to file. So you shouldn't listen to somebody who doesn't know about your income or your scholarships or hasn't taken a tax test, because that might not be correct advice. Now, if you've earned less than $12,000, you don't have to file legally, but you'd be leaving this money on the table, because as a low income worker or as a parent, there are credits available to you that you can only get by filing your taxes. And so you do have to do that. And I would recommend it just to learn, since we have free appointments and options for you. Please go ahead and book an appointment, get the help, file. You don't have to hit submit if you're under that legal threshold. You can just go to the appointment, get all the way through, learn, and then make your decision. You don't have to sign and send until you're ready to. That's what happens at these appointments. You confirm and you send it in. Again, there was a question about if an undocumented non-minor dependent is filing, do they qualify? They will qualify for the California tax credits for the state return. So please go ahead, book an appointment. We do have translation services available at our sites in different languages that are needed. So you can get an appointment in your primary language. There's questions about self-employment and W-9 forms. Our tax prep checklist and our guide explain self-employment, how to count that as income, and how to count up all of your expenses. But there's this other question about, what if I get a 1099 from my ILP or from my transitional, from any kind of class, but it wasn't for work? So it has to be earned income for the earned income tax credits. So, a lot of those stipends that you get is not for earned work, it's for attending something. So it's not taxable it's not taxable income in that way, or it doesn't count towards these credit unless you did work for them that as self-employment. So you have to kind of check that, but typically those things don't count. In our guide, we clarify that certain payments that are given to foster youth, like transitional housing payments or the SILP payments or the infant supplement payments or expectant parent payments, none of those are taxable. You don't put them on your taxes. So for Parenting Tay, there was another question about, do they have to be 18? The answer is no. The parenting credit and the earned income tax credits for your parents of any age, whether you had your first kid at age 13, 14, 15, whenever you have your first kid, start filing your taxes. Now, if your kid is 3 years old, we can help you file back 3 years prior and get all of that money that was missed during the pandemic or the child tax credits, the stimulus checks for your child. So book an appointment and we will help you with that. There was a question like, do you have appointments in a certain part of California? If you click on our roster, find your service area or join one of the statewide JBay events. So we are covering the statewide JBay events, are covering any other areas, or use the Vital Locator tool to find an appointment near you. Can youth who are self-employed or earning stipends through job training programs qualify as having earned $1? The answer is yes. If you're self-employed, let's say you were babysitting or you mowed a lawn or you helped people move over a few weekends and they paid you in cash, there is a way for the VITA volunteers or for you to enter earned income known as other income into the tax return and to claim these earned credits. So book an appointment. Self-employment is if you're a first-time filer, we'll show you how to do that and how to save your receipts and keep your expenses. And it's in the guide. There's actually an Excel spreadsheet that helps you track your business expenses. So the next question is, what if we already filed? Can we go back and add the other stuff? Yes, you can change a tax return from past years, or if you filed really early this year and you skipped over the California section and you couldn't see where to click to get the foster youth tax credit, you do what's called an amendment. So you amend your tax return. And you can do that by booking an appointment on our sites or by going into the system that you had your appointment with or filed your taxes with, and you file what's called a 1040X amendment. Is the money to give to foster child or foster parent to keep? So tax refunds are, when you file your taxes, there's an option to put in up to 3 bank accounts of yours of the tax filer. So this goes right into the bank account of the young person who's filing their taxes. This is your money to spend on what you need to spend it in the way that is right for you. So this money goes into your bank account about 2 to 3 weeks after filing. If you don't have a bank account, you have a paper check and you file, when you send your return, that paper check comes 6 to 8 weeks later. So if you don't have a bank account, go ahead, work on with your bank on partners, talk to ILP, get a local credit union, do what you got to do. Or you can use a prepaid debit card by calling the number on the back and using the account and routing number, and you spend that money on your prepaid debit card or like a Cash App or PayPal account that has a routing and account number. But this is your money, it's your refund, it boosts your income. It does not go to anybody else. It goes to the taxpayer. The next question is, let's see. If you didn't receive any of the stimulus checks, how do you go about that? So if you didn't receive any of the stimulus checks, the only way to claim them is by filing a 2020 and a 2021 tax return. So book an appointment and let the site coordinator know that you need help getting your stimulus checks. They'll book you for a few extra sessions so you can file 2022, 2021, and 2020 and get all of that money when you do those appointments. But you do have to file your tax return at this point to claim them. All right, I'll just take a couple more. There's a lot of questions. And there's a lot of questions because the tax system is sometimes very confusing. So, you know, the best thing to do is get an appointment and get these questions answered. And we'll also send out and be working on a frequently asked questions throughout the tax season this year that we'll send to all registrants of this webinar once we have that created. But if you've got a question, most likely everybody else has that same question. And so we're trying to help you understand how to get this money, which the best thing you can do is go get a free appointment. So I'm just looking, is there anything that any other panelists want to share or speak to, or we can kind of stop there for today?
Hi, Anna, Kanisha. Just wanted to, I saw a couple of questions in there. We just wanted to reiterate in terms of how youth get a foster care verification letter if that's the path that they want to pursue. Again, a foster care verification letter is not needed if you check the consent authorization box. But if you do, if your ages 18, 19, and 20, that means you're not yet 21. Whether or not you're a current or a former foster youth, you can get a letter from your current social worker or the county office who opened up your case. We also have this information in the chat. In the event that you need assistance with locating who that may be, you can reach out to us directly, and that's at the in an email, which is flyverify@dss.ca.gov. Again, that's in the chat from Amparo. Also, if you're 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and you need a letter, you will go to the foster care ombudsman's office. That's also in the chat. They have a phone number and an email. Again, you will go to your county office, your social worker, or foster care ombudsman to get a foster care verification letter only. The California Department of Social Services, our unit, Tay, me, Pal, Anthony, and the rest of us, we will verify your eligibility. But to get a letter, you can go those routes. Please look at the link in the chat to access the information for direct emails. That's what I wanted to add, Anna, just so that there's quite a few questions about that. Like, again, if you're over, again, 18 through 25, there's two methods you can utilize to get a verification letter.
And
Thank you, Anna.
Those contacts and those links are in the guide and the checklist. So we did put those contacts. So if you go to our website, get the guide, get the checklist, Andy can put in our main tax landing page again for everybody in the chat with all of our tax filing and resources. And then I know Andrew is back. Andrew, I think you wanted to clarify one question that was asked earlier. I also did my best to clarify. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I might have dropped off before you clarified. I just, I don't remember the exact question, but realized that probably we should have taken that one, jotted it down and run it by some other folks here. Do you recall the exact nature of that I-10 question?
I think it was if they're undocumented, if the spouse is filing and is undocumented, but their partner is using a social security number or is a U.S. citizen, could they both get it?
So they're both on the return. One's going to have either an I-10 or a social, and the other would have no number? Is that the scenario?
I think an I-10. So I clarified that to qualify, you do have to file with an I-10.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, and both would have to have either, if it's a couple, if you're filing jointly as a couple, both would, one could have a social, one could have an I-10, but both filing jointly as a couple, both would need to have one of those two numbers. And what I couldn't remember after I got off is whether that scenario was where one wouldn't, because then they wouldn't qualify for Cali ITC. If you're filing jointly as a couple, both would have to have either a social or an I-10. Is that consistent with what your understanding is?
yes.
Okay, sounds good. Just wanted to be sure.
Thanks.
You can never be careful enough in tax land. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. So my contact is on this page. Andy has dropped into the chat our main slides from today, which has the links to all of our resources and the videos, the recordings. We'll send things out later today once everything's up on YouTube. So you know how to get a hold of us. You've got all of the resources that we could possibly come up with to try and explain the tax world in any kind of friendly way. We're doing our best. So if you've got questions, we're trying to have the answers, or we know the right people, as you saw from CDSS and FTB today, they will find the answers that are and help us out. So they've been doing a wonderful job implementing. They've done this so quickly to make this resource available this year. So please share our thanks, and please be kind. Anytime it's the first year doing something, there may be some hiccups, but we're all going to get through this together and get this money out the door. So appreciating you, and have a great rest of the day. Bye, everybody.